Thank you. Like the school alarm.
Are you ready?
We are ready, sir.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Here.
Chairman Irvine.
Here.
We have a quorum of the committee of 4 present, sir.
Thank you. Let's see. Our first order of business is approving the minutes for the Strategic Planning and Service Delivery meeting held on February 13th, 2019. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Abstain.
Okay, so it's 3. You abstain on the February one. Okay.
Okay. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes for this Strategic Planning and Service Delivery meeting held on April 10th, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Reverend Miller. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
3 to 1. Reverend Miller abstains.
Thank you. The next order of business is approving the minutes for the Strategic Planning and Service Delivery meeting held May 8th, 2019. A motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
I'll abstain.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
It's approved with 3 to 1 votes, and Ms. Alvarez-Alias abstains.
Thank you. Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing an agreement for the Northeast Illinois Regional Commuter Railroad Corporation, doing business as Metra, to subsidize bus route number 128, Soldier Field Express. And we've got Mike Connolly. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mike Connolly, your Chief Planning Officer. Before you today is an ordinance which would authorize a new 3-year agreement with Metra for subsidized bus service on the route number 128, Soldier Field Express. This public bus route operates as an express bus during Chicago Bears home football games, providing service between Ogilvie Transportation Center, Union Station, and Soldier Field. CTA and Metra have continued this partnership for operation of this route since 1988. As with all of our contract routes, the sponsor, in this case Metra, pays for the actual cost of operating the service with a credit given for the amount of actual farebox revenue collected. The fare is $5 for a round trip. This contract will be in effect for 3 years through the end of the 2021 football season. Thank you, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you have.
Have any questions? All right. Thank you, Mike. Then, let's see, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the ordinance and place it on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second?
So moved and seconded by Ms. Alvarez-Alias. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. You have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, then we are adjourned.
Excuse me 1 second. You ready to go to the next committee?
All right.
Sure.
All right, then, great. Then I would also like to call to order the July 17th, 2019 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Director Silva will not be here today. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Here. Ms. Alvarez-Alias?
Here.
Reverend Miller?
Here.
Vice Chairman Irvine?
Here.
We have 4 members of the committee present, so we have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business today is the approval of the committee minutes of June 12th, 2019. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Secretary, please
Reverend
call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias?
Yes.
Director Irvine?
Yes.
The motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is a review of the finance report. Jeremy?
Good morning, I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be going over the system-generated revenues and expenses for the month of May. With regard to farebox and passes, we see farebox totals down about $500,000 as we have seen over the past several months, but we continue to see outperformance on passes, good continued performance on the 30-day pass in particular allows us to see the fare and pass totals up about $300,000 net against those two lines. The reduced fare subsidy continues to be cut by half by the state, so we continue to see that down $1.2 million. As we talked about in the last board meeting for the 2020 budget, we will show that at the lower amount, but not diminishing the fact that we will continue to make the need known to the state legislature as to the full amount of the subsidy. Non-fare box totals are up about $300,000. So overall for the month of May, we see total revenues about $600,000 down in variance to budget. Average fares up a couple of pennies, and free rides about $100,000 higher than we saw in May of 2018. For the year-to-date revenue numbers, we see fare box totals down about $6 million, passes up over $3 million. Again, that is primarily driven by the polar vortex, particularly on the fare box, the cash pay per use line there in the early part of the year. But again, continued progress on 30-day passes, 7-day passes, and the like on the pass line. So overall, a little over $2.5 million off budget on the fare and pass total line. The reduced fare subsidy, about $6 million, again, due to the 50% haircut that we received from the state. And non-fare box totals up about $500,000. So overall, year-to-date revenue numbers are down about $8 million on a year-to-date basis. But again, we'll talk about on the expense side of the house, how we've continued to cut expenses so that we can accommodate the shortfalls that we're seeing on revenues. Average fare is up a couple of pennies, and free rides on a year-to-date basis are about $300,000 less than this period last year. On the expense side, as I said, we have continued to make progress with the help of the departments on ensuring that we offset the shortfalls on the revenue side. So on labor, we see favorability of about $660,000, a little under $200,000 for materials, fuel about $150,000 favorable, power and injuries and damages essentially flat, with security services about $200,000 favorable, and a little under $500,000 for other expenses. So overall, for the month of May, we see about $1.7 million of favorability on the expense side. That offsets against the revenue shortfall. So for the month of May, we see a positive variance of about $1 million. That conforms with what we've seen over the past several months as we continue to chip away at the shortfall that we saw materialize because of the polar vortex in the cold weather in the first couple months of the year. So we have, as you can see here on the year-to-date numbers, been able to continue the monthly trend through the year on expenses, where where labor is about $1.5 million favorable, material a little over $1 million, as is fuel. Power and injuries and damages essentially flat, and security services a little under $1 million of favorability, and a little over $2.5 million for other expenses, which leaves us about $7.3 million to the positive for year-to-date numbers. So when you offset that against the revenues, that $3.8 million negative variance that we had at the end of February has been chipped away, and we're now down to $900,000 of negative variance, as of the end of May here. So again, we'll continue to make progress as we go through the coming months, and we have been able to, and hopefully we'll be able to continue chipping away about $1 million a month on that shortfall that we saw materialize in the first couple months of the year. With regard to the three commodities that we purchased, fuel, power, and natural gas, since the last board meeting, we've been able to make some selective purchases on the fuel side of the house due to very favorable pricing that we've seen there. So we've been able to increase our fuel forward purchase on 2020 and 2021 volumes. So now we're up to 85% for 2020 and 50% for 2021. So again, we'll look for opportunistic opportunities to buy the remaining portion for 2021. Power, we're fully locked in. And now that both the cold weather and the severely hot weather have started to relax, On, the natural gas side of the house, forward pricing for that commodity looks like it should start tracking downward so that we'll be able to look for opportunistic buys on natural gas side as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do we have
Thank
any
you.
questions?
More of a comment. One, just a great job in terms of holding the line on expenses. I think here we are looking at May's budget, and already we've got the deficit under $1 million, so great job there. One of the things I was looking at just in terms of ridership, I was, reading the summary page in terms of, 300,000 rides lower than budget. And then if you go back and take a look at 2019 versus 2018, 700,000 fewer rides. Couple of things. One, it'll be interesting to see, maybe as we get toward the end of the year, with the increase in gasoline tax, because we've always said that one of the challenges that headwinds that we've faced has been lower gas prices, Lyft and Uber. And so with the gasoline tax increase, gasoline has kind of jumped up a little bit. That's not only going to impact people who drive their own personal cars, but it's also going to impact probably prices for Uber and Lyft. So I'll be curious to see, our ridership numbers, if there's a jump from prior year, if we see things inch up a little bit as you get into October, November, December. So I'll be curious to look at that. The other thing I want to ask you about in terms of our fuel purchase, we kind of knew in advance that, there was a good chance the state was going to pass a capital bill. Why didn't we just lock in all of 2019 and as much of 2020? How are we impacted in terms of our fuel prices?
So,
purchase?
great question. We do not pay, we're exempted from the MFT tax itself. With regard to the increase that we see, we do not pay the current rate, nor would we pay the additional rate that is going into effect.
Okay.
With regard to that, we're absolved of, any type of impact from that.
Then clearly
we
should
we
probably
will-
benefit
We will get the benefit from the fact that the capital funding that is generated from that will come to transit and other entities, but we don't pay it.
Hopefully we should benefit too with, not just from the capital bill, but the fact that prices are increasing.
Correct.
Hopefully people will migrate back to public transit as well as move away from some of the car service rides.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The other point I would make is even on the ride hailing and ride share side of the house, those fuel prices do impact them as well.
Yeah.
And so it will be interesting to also see what starts to happen with even the pricing that Uber and Lyft do for their trips as they start to increase, as their costs start to increase, and whether or not they're going to subsidize that difference, or are they going to pass any of that on to their customers. Interestingly enough, there is an article involving the city of New York, who you may be aware imposed a minimum wage requirement on Uber and Lyft that resulted in an increase in the pricing of their trips in New York, in which they've seen a dramatic decrease in the number of rides that are being taken. So there's some indication, at least, that the customers who use the ride-hailing services have some degree of price sensitivity to them, and if those prices start to go up for whatever reason, we believe it will impact their ridership levels, and the question then will be, will those people shift back to CTA? So there's a lot of things happening right now that'll be very interesting for us to monitor really closely in terms of what it means for CTA.
Doval, I missed the article. What did they set the salary, the hourly rate?
That's a good question. I don't recall what New York's hourly rate is. It may be $15 an hour, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
And I'll get the article to all of you so you can
Okay.
see what the story was about.
Jeremy, on the medical center, we had that, about special transportation a few months ago. How's that coming with those
I'll
rides?
ask Mike Conley to join, and he can opine on medical center.
So with the reopening of the station, is that what you're talking about? Yes, we've seen an increase in the ridership. And it hasn't rebounded to the full extent that we would like, but normally that takes year and a half. Okay?
Just with the two credits.
I've got, and I know I ask this almost every time, but I want to keep hearing how we're moving forward on the 30-day pass. I know that continues to grow. And so I know we were talking about a number of different ways of marketing that. Are we progressing on that? I know we were hearing that we're going to get something, kind of a plan.
Yes, so we continue to work on the corporate services platform, and that's an umbrella platform that incorporates transit benefits and other services that we can provide to corporates around, the city here. The transit benefit program is a great opportunity to kind of introduce people to the passes, and particularly the 30-day passes, because employees can buy that at a tax-advantaged rate. So instead of essentially paying $105, they're paying, $75 or $80, depending on what their tax rate is. So it's a great it's greatly advantageous for them. And then when we're talking to the corporate entities, we'll be, again, expressing how advantageous it is for those entities because of the tax breaks that, as an employer, you receive as well. So that's again, continue to be fertile ground for us to continue to expand, particularly the 30-day pass as a growth opportunity for us.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to have so much potential to it. I mean, were you going to say something?
No, what I was going to say is I agree that I view that sort of low-hanging fruit for us. And what I was going to recommend is that we prepare a briefing to give you a more detailed understanding of what we're doing and sort of the timeline in which we're going to be doing it, so you can get a better sense of sort of how this is going to fit in terms of the overall strategy
I think
around
that
that.
would be very helpful. One of the things I wanted to mention, kind of an idea, I don't know if it would work or not, but I'm traveling a lot this summer, and one of the things, they have all these packages whenever you travel all over, and we have a lot of visitors in the summertime, right? It's the biggest time. And I'm wondering if a package, I mean, even we have the 7-day, 30-day, whatever, to Expedia even, or something like that when people are looking to come in. So we have a lot of people that come in from other cities and other countries, and to include that, I mean, people might want to purchase it up front.
Sure.
I know I'm doing that with a couple of other places that I'm going to, so I don't know if that's part of
Yeah.
the plan.
I don't know if it's part of the plan, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I will definitely ask Jeremy and his team to look at opportunities to do that. I also know that we've had some conversations with the Department of Aviation about how we better promote the our fare media and our fare products at O'Hara Midway. And the commissioner and I have really been having, I think, really positive discussions about what things they can do to help support promoting CTA at the airport. So I think will also generate a similar type of benefit from us. So I think there's a lot of interest around providing alternatives to get to and from the airport. And in O'Hara in particular, because of the people mover construction, they are really having a lot of challenges out there with congestion and with the timeliness of getting customers in and out of the airport, where transit is being viewed as a major benefactor to support that problem.
Another question I have, so we have had extreme cold, and now we have a couple of days that are coming up with extreme heat. And I'm assuming we're well prepared for that. Do we see that as possibly affecting our budget in any way?
There can be some increases in maintenance costs when we go into extreme heat. Obviously, we do a lot to prepare for our summer weather well in advance of this type of heat wave. But generally speaking, our fleet will have more mechanical issues and things like that they'll have to deal with, particularly around air conditioners and things of that nature, particularly our older buses, which tend to be a little bit more challenged in that than normal. But I don't think I don't view this as a significant change in our budget. And the heat wave itself, while it's going to be intense for a few days, is not a sustained 7 or 8 day type of event that would really start to wear and tear on our equipment. Generally speaking, the longer it goes, the more we start to see the impact of it, because it's the daily grind of running our vehicles and that's weather that can start to raise additional problems for us. But we're well prepared to take it. We are We've been talking almost daily about our preparation to deal with all of this. The maintenance department and my vehicle maintenance people are very familiar with our equipment and are taking the proactive steps that they need to make sure that the air conditioners are working properly, that the types of things that might normally break down in this type of weather are being checked, so that we don't have a huge influx of mechanical problems during this time.
Thank you.
Going back to the marketing component, I know in the past we've sent teams out to go and sell passes and maybe vendor cards, like with mobile payment terminals. Are we doing that again this summer?
Yeah, so we, for special events and things like that,
Or just
yes.
any place where we think there might be good market?
Yes, yeah, we continue to look at that and also look at the opportunities to expand that type of platform, particularly trying to get people, kind of ahead of the travel, and going to their corporate entities as well. So we'll continue to look at opportunities to expand that.
Great. Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, we don't have to do that.
No, let's wait till the contract.
Yeah. Our final order of business today is the review of 5 purchase and sales award recommendations. Ellen? So our first contract numbers are B1 and B2. Do you have any questions?
So Ellen, really no question, just kind of walk the board a little bit through. I see that it's a 5-year contract, $132 million. For those who weren't selected, DBEs and SBEs, and maybe this is the one question, how do you continue to work with them about potential contracting opportunities?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is those firms that are in the Tier 2, they can also be subcontractors to Tier 1.
Okay.
So that's one opportunity. And any of the firms who weren't selected can also be subcontractors to those tiers. Additionally, last Wednesday, so on the 10th, we advertised a contract we placed an advertisement for 3 contracts, one for surveying work, one for geotechnical work, and one for architectural work, and that was SBE contracts. I can let JP give you more information about that.
Right, so to your first question, and the comment that Ellen made about subconsulting, we're going to have a meet and greet event once the contracts are executed with all of these consultants, so that the DBE community can meet them and talk about opportunities for upcoming work. And like Ellen stated, we advertised a contract that we did through our small business program, an SBE set aside, where only certified SBEs can qualify for the geotechnical surveying and architectural work.
Now, is the only meeting we have is the one that we hold here, is a meet and greet, or do we go out to the communities and?
No, we'll go out, so the proposers were asked to submit diversity outreach plans as part of the evaluation, so they made their own commitments to hold outreach events, and we'll make sure that we take them out to the community, not just here at CTA headquarters.
When does that outreach begin?
Once the contracts are executed and we have them on board, we'll plan the Meet the Contractor event. We'll let the board know, we'll send a flyer through.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to take a moment to make a comment about this particular contract. This is something new for CTA, something we've never done before, where we tried to break up the contract in a way that allows for multiple opportunities for companies of various sizes to be able to compete for and get business with CTA. I think it's going to be extremely helpful as we start the new capital program, and there's going to be a whole lot more activity under this contract than we've had over the past couple of years because of the fact that I have funding to support it. But, Mr. Chairman, you may recall that we've met with companies in many instances who have talked about the fact that they've had a really hard time, particularly after they graduated out of the DBE program, of being able to get business and to be able to continue to compete in this marketplace. And part of the objective here was obviously to create opportunities where companies like that could compete as primes and not be subject to just the subcontracting opportunities that tend to get very limited if you're not a qualified DBE participating and helping the prime meet their goal. We're going to be looking at this for other major contracts of this type, of this nature that we're going to be doing going forward, and so you're going to be hearing us coming back to the board with other sort of big services contracts that we're trying to do this, as well as Bill and his team indicated to you, making sure that we're separating out opportunities that we know uniquely tend to be areas where DBE firms and smaller firms can compete, and competing those services separately. So this overall strategy is something that I've asked Ellen to pass along to her counterparts at other city agencies as a way in which you can really maximize opportunities. And I think we're going to be really interested in following this contract as it goes forward to see how it does impact these companies and create the opportunities that we're trying to target for them. This has clearly been something that the professional services organizations and others have been talking to me about doing. And I think that the feedback that I'm getting from them is that they are appreciative of the fact that we've actually tried some innovative ways to open up opportunities for them that will allow them to be able to compete going forward. So we'll keep an eye on this contract, and we'll give periodic updates to the board about how it's going, and whether or not we're achieving the goals and objectives around the diversity aspects of it. But I think given the way we set this up, you're going to see some very high goals and a lot of opportunities for minority-owned businesses and DBEs to be able to compete with and benefit from the projects that we're going to be working on.
Just a last comment, we also have the ability to, we're going to evaluate each task order for its own DBE goal, so that we can maximize the opportunities, like President Carter was saying, on each task order and not leave it up to the prime to come back and say what opportunities they found.
Is there a big issue with DBEs graduating and then, kind of not being able to get additional work?
Yes.
Yes, we've
I'll
heard, yes.
answer that for him. Yes, it's a big issue, and Terry knows that we've had companies come in and meet with us personally to explain to us what it really does to their corporation. In many cases, you've had companies that just went bankrupt because they no longer could apply as DBEs and really start all over again to basically get into that niche again. And so part of the issue, of course, is that the personal net worth and other caps that are on DBEs basically move them out of the market at a certain financial point in the organization's history, and there's no bridge. You just go right off a cliff. And as we've heard people talk to us about this, we've had a lot of conversations about what we can do on the procurement side of the house that still maximizes competition and ensures we're going to get a quality product from our contractors, but also is carving out opportunities that we think may fit better for smaller companies as opposed to the big companies who could swallow up everything. Obviously, in an environment where there's a lot of work, that becomes a little bit easier to accomplish than in an environment we have very little work going on, and that's one of the reasons, that's one of the ancillary benefits of having a massive capital program, is that there's going to be a lot of work, and there's a lot of opportunity for everybody to participate, and now it's up to us to basically lay out the strategies that will allow everyone at various levels to be able to engage in that, and that's really the beginning of what you're seeing here with this kind of a contract.
And as you mentioned, that's a discussion that's being had with other departments that also have DBEs.
Yes, we have historically viewed ourselves as sort of the leader in terms of innovation around this area, and Ellen has a working group of other procurement agent officers throughout the city that get together and talk about what they're doing, and this is an opportunity for us to really promote this sort of innovation as a template for what other city agencies may want to pursue as they start to put in place similar contracts for the work that they're going to be doing.
That's great.
Thanks. Are there any other questions on B1 or B2? Next, we have contract number E1. Any questions?
If I could just kind of go back to, I'm trying to see, B2, is that the maintenance contract?
For the doors? The
Yeah.
maintenance for the doors?
Yeah, just
Yes.
kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Sure. So, Bill, do you want to grab this? You want me to?
Sure. This is our maintenance contracts for ADA doors. These are the
Bill,
push
just,
button.
ID yourself real quick.
I'm Bill Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer. So these are the access doors to our stations and other facilities for mobility challenged personnel. And what the contractor provides us for is a single trade response to maintenance of these doors. Is typically, if you take a rail station, our customer service representatives in the station, as part of their shift responsibilities, check these doors for functionality. If they identify at some point in time this door not being functional, it's given to our control center, who dispatches a facilities maintenance personnel to do a quick assessment of it. If we find it damaged in such a way, we dispatch the contractor to make repairs. This contract has parameters around response time, in which those repairs have to be performed within, as well as the type of products that are used for those repairs.
Okay. Because the reason I mention it, I know Cabot on a number of occasions has brought their attention outages, doors, escalators. And I'm just trying to find out, since this is an incumbent company, you know, again, I don't know if there are penalties, what's their skin in the game in terms of, you know, how we track their turnaround with doing it? Is there just routine maintenance that they do versus waiting to be called? Again, not seeing the contractor just trying to, again, I know Kevin has been out on the system and he's, hey, are you aware of this? Or he'll send an email, are you aware of that? And I'm just thinking versus word of mouth, because you have a tendency to know in some cases where there's outages more than others, and I'm just trying to figure out, is there anything that calls for just routine maintenance at some stations where we know there's a higher usage than other stations versus them just waiting on something to happen, and then all of a sudden we've got to wait 24 to 48 hours before they can get out and take care of it?
Sure, that's a really great question. So the contract does provide parameters for us to be able to access inspection and preventive maintenance protocols under it. Historically, they've not been accessed under this contract. It's the second time this contract's been bid, but we did add scope so that we could exercise that. We're working on developing, we've been working with Director Irvine in some conversations too about what are our high criteria stations for elevator access. And we'd use those similarly for, there's also some parameters in here for an emergency quick call turnaround for priority 1 doors. And so we're working on those criteria so we can evaluate and use that criteria going forward. So.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to monitor the next few years, because I think Dorval talked about it with the capital money. We're gonna try to accelerate in terms of all of our stations becoming more ADA accessible. And so at the end of this contract, to me, renewing it with them or anyone else is gonna really depend on the work that they're doing in these current years. So that's why I was just thinking, we're getting ready to have even more stations now with escalators and elevators and all of that. So I just want to make sure that, again, we just really pay attention to the service that we're getting, especially when you've got a 5-year contract.
Absolutely. And we track all the breakdown repair work orders go into our work order management system. We can identify when they were open and when they were closed. We can pull metrics out of there about the turnaround times on these things. A little background: in the prior 3-year period with this contract, they did 231 repairs. The overwhelming quantity were vandalism. Somebody walks up, typically pounds on the button and breaks the plate on it. That's the most common type of breakdown repair. So we certainly can monitor that and go forward and report back to you as necessary.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that I asked Bill and his team to do is as he indicated, under the contract, we can identify priority locations that would get accelerated responses to breakdowns or failures. And I suggested that we may want to have a conversation with our ADA Advisory Committee and get their input in terms of identifying stations that they may feel would warrant that type of consideration, so that we're sort of we're in sync with the disability community over how they view certain stations, and not just focus in like what we traditionally call our key stations as the basis for making that determination.
So, and I know with this contract, there was only one bidder and a couple of vendors that could have bid, didn't respond. Is there any consideration about the possibility of bringing this back in-house in the future if it's still in the situation where you only have one bidder?
So we certainly can look at that as an opportunity. It went out to the street to begin with because it's kind of, they're one of those oddities of the union environment type things. They're a mixed trade entity because doors tend to be one jurisdiction where the openers tend to be a separate jurisdiction and the wiring between is a third jurisdiction. So there was a good opportunity to gain efficiencies by giving it out to a contractor. But we certainly, we have the skill set we've maintained in the past. We've used the benchmarks for our performance historically to be able to challenge it against the contractors here. So we will definitely can do that analysis next time around.
Great.
Did the share that on each shift, that they do some routine checking, that is included in the contract?
Yes, Reverend. So our customer service assistants and representatives in the station, as part of their responsibilities, every shift check those doors at least once, if not more. So typically 3 times a day, those doors are being checked for functionality at that point. So we do have CTA personnel that are going through there.
You know, we can sort of take this offline. I'm just, again, I'm thinking about tier 1, tier 2s, tier 3s. So for example, for me, a tier 3 would be, we just finished doing the red line reconstruction, so those would be the newer ADA accessible stations. But we've got other stations that are older. You've got some probably with the red, purple modernization that's gonna be fast track. But again, what I'd like to see, and again, we can have this conversation offline, is sort of grouping some of our stations by tier 1, tier 2s, tier 3s. And that way we can sort of check, because again, 5 years, they should be operating, doing fine with little maintenance. But it's like our buses. You can almost be assured that your older buses, you know, are gonna break down or have challenges under the stress and wear and tear of the day-to-day service that they provide versus a newer bus that we bring online. So again, we can talk offline about it, but Kevin, I'm gonna talk with you about maybe that's something your committee can sort of start to take a look at. It's just tiering and just, I wanna pay attention to it because they're almost a sole source. And, you know, Dover knows how I feel about these companies that think they're annuities, in the sense that once you're with them, you don't have an opportunity to do anything else. And because we don't have a lot of folks stepping up bidding on it, I just want to make sure that we're maximizing this contract and we're getting great service for people in the disability community who take public transit.
Understood, and glad to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Next is contract number E1. Any questions? Okay. Next is contract number F1. Any questions? And finally, we have contract number G1, which was mistakenly listed as G2 on the published agenda. Any questions?
Now, this is a change order, Ellen, just kind of walk me through, let's see.
Sure, so this is a change order. The contract had come to an end, so the using department asked us to extend. So we have the authority to extend for a year, the first year. Purchasing can do that, so we sent a letter extending for a year, and the using group is now looking for funding for that year extension. I will let, we can talk a little bit further to it, but I will say that the city of Chicago looks to award a contract for, we think, about the same services in August or September. So we're going to work together to make sure that we'll look at the scope, we'll look at the pricing, and we'll determine if that's the way for us to go. If that's most advantageous to CTA, then we'll piggyback off of that. But if we determine the scope isn't quite what we need, or we think we can get better pricing, then we will keep it in-house and we'll go out ourselves. So this gives us a time to do both.
There's DBE participation on this?
Yes, we assessed when it was originally awarded a 7% goal. STI is committed to 21.97, and they're currently at 30%.
Who are the companies?
The 2 DBE companies they're using are INOC, that's call center help desk support, and then Smart Technology Services, which is helping with break fix and other support services.
Any other questions on G1? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 5 contracts in the omnibus for approval?
So move.
I'll second.
Thank you. And then I made a mistake and I skipped over our one ordinance, which is an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America NA for the 2019 Bank of America Chicago Marathon. I believe that's Jeremy and Mike. Gwen?
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and sadly joined by Mike Gwynn, who's been the Director of Revenue here at CTA for over 8 years. Sadly, this is his last day at the CTA. Really glad for his future opportunities, but really sad and to see him leave the CTA family, but he will always be part of the CTA family. With that,
Thank you.
the co-pro.
Good morning, everybody. Presented for your consideration is a co-promotional agreement with Bank of America for the Chicago Marathon, which will be held on October 13th, 2019. This is the 19th year that the CTA has partnered with the organizers of the Chicago Marathon to promote the event. CTA is providing $18,270 in unsold advertising on buses and trains in exchange for $60,000 in promotional value from the marathon. This value to CTA will include sponsorship recognition in the 150,000 spectator guides that go out, a link on the sponsor webpage, our logo, and link on 2 email newsletters sent to all participants, and a booth at the Marathon Health and Fitness Expo. We'll also be pursuing offering the ability to purchase fares in advance, and we'll also have that heavy presence at the airports marathon weekend to help welcome everybody to Chicago, start their weekend off with a great welcome presence, and answer any questions about accessing the system. This promotion will allow CTA to reach out to an estimated 1.7 million people over the marathon weekend to encourage current CTA customers to use CTA for non-work trips, but also encourage all the tourists and new riders and visitors for the marathon to use CTA to follow runners and access other marathon events. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Any questions?
So no question, Mike, I'll comment at the end of the board meeting, so I just wanted to correct something Jeremy said. You never leave CTA. What we consider ourselves, we're a training ground for talent. And we train talent leaves, but that talent becomes a contact. So no one ever leaves CTA. I've been here almost 10 years now, so. But what I wanted to say, as you know, my day job is in healthcare, and it's real big on data. One of the things that I'd like to start to try to do is to take a look and see year in and year out, do we see a spike in ridership? It would be interesting. We have all of these co-promotions, and I know it's we give them unused advertisement space, but it would be interesting year after year to see over that 2 to 3 day period, do we see a spike? Do we really, or is ride declining? I mean, we see it declining throughout the system from year to date and all of that, but I'm curious when we have these co-promotions like Bank of America, 2017, 2018, or even we can just start kind of going forward. Do we see the ridership kind of plateau during those 3 days? Or we've seen an increase in these events that we have these co-promotion opportunities with? Because I think it helps us kind of going forward in terms of the service we provide. Could we do something different? What we could do besides just saying it's a great partnership. We've been doing it for 20 years. Just looking at the data to see, okay, what's the return on the investment? Are we really tracking ridership over those 2 to 3 days that we have this kind of a partnership? I'd just like to kind of see that kind of going forward when we start to renew these co-promotional agreements that we have sort of year in versus, just tracking it.
Sure.
Okay.
Will do.
We can tell you that Marathon Weekend is one of the highest ridership days at O'Hare.
Yeah.
And really starting Thursday through Saturday, it is jam-packed over there. So it is it's a great bump for O'Hare. We can look at it kind of for the rest of the system, but it's a high ridership weekend generally because a lot of people, I mean, the course of the marathon
Yeah, the traffic
touches.
is crazy. I live
Oh, yeah.
I live in the South Loop, and the traffic is crazy. I was just curious when it comes to our service. If you look year after year,
Sure.
just getting
We-
that. Just think when you get that data, it just helps you as a system and as a service you provide to kind of take a step back from it and say, great, we're doing it here. We're seeing the return on the investment, and if it's just, let's say, for example, 2018 ridership we saw 500,000 extra rides during that 4-day period. But if you go back and you take a look and you saw 700,000, rider, that could be to ride share that wasn't around back then, so that could account for some of it. Again, we have so many of these, I would just like to figure out a way to measure the impact of the relationship over time. Not that
Sure.
I want to offend them or anything, but just having that data in hand.
We and we certainly have all that data, so we can put together that analysis. We can look at the various co-promotions that we do, whether it's the Shamrock Marathon or the Bank of America Marathon, stuff like that. And we can give you sort of some historical data, and I can also ask my planning department to also do some analysis about the other factors may be impacting that in terms of what we're seeing in terms of ridership, because we can also tap into rideshare data and other stuff to see what's happening with their rides around some point in time. This also feeds into bigger conversations that we're having with the city around special events and the way in which they sort of manage the various modes of transportation to encourage, public transportation over personal vehicles or ride hailing and stuff like that. So all of that sort of feeds into some broader policy conversations that we want to have and that we hope will ultimately help drive those numbers continually upwards. But yes, we'll get you that data and we'll provide you with the analysis that goes along with it.
I know we'll have people at the airports. Do we have folks going to the metro stations too?
But we can reach out to Metro and ask what their coverage is. The airports are great because so many international and so many tourists are coming into town. And just to greet them, hand them a map that has where their hotel is, and just draw a line on it is really beneficial for all those travelers who are coming in. Transit usage is very high in Europe, in other countries, so a lot of people have that thought. They don't even think about renting a car. They're going to use CTA all weekend. So it's a great welcome to Chicago and a great way to start it off.
Okay. And if there are no further questions, then may I have leave to place this item in the omnibus for approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Since there's no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Patterson. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
The motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thank you. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
1 second, Terry.
All right.
Ready, Tracy?
Tracy?
Pro. With Tracy here, it just moves along. We are ready, sir. Good morning. Yes, Director Silver will not be here today. Reverend Miller, Mr. Irvine, Ms. Alvarez-Rosales, Chairman Peterson. We have a quorum of the board with 4 members present.
Hearing none, may I now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 12, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Reverend Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Irvine,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
Chairman, the motion is approved with 4 yes votes in the minutes, and I think we have public comment. That turns out that nobody, I believe, is here in public comment. We have it on the agenda, but there was one person, as of today, there was one person coming, but I don't think she came. Is anybody here who had signed in for public comment that we missed out front? No? So, sir, there's no public comment today.
All right, okay. Then we will take up executive session. It is my understanding that there will be executive session this morning, Karen?
Yes, Chairman, we will have executive session pursuant to Section 2, Paragraph C, Subparagraph 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
All right. We are adjourned for a few minutes.
Recess, sir.
Recessed. Yeah.
We're about to start, so if people could take off their please silence your cell phones as we're going to begin again.
Yep, I'm ready to roll. Yep.
Good, I'm glad we did it.
You ready, Jack?
Yes.
All right, good to go.
If she's ready, we're all ready.
All right.
Chairman.
May I have a motion to return to the open meeting of the Transit Board?
So moved.
And second, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. Our next order of business are reports from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery and the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Irvine.
Thank you, Chairman. The Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery met this morning. The committee approved the February, April, and May 2019 committee minutes. The committee also reviewed and approved an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Northeast Illinois Regional Commuter Railroad Corporation doing business as Metra to subsidize bus route number 128 Soldier Field Express. Place the ordinance on the omnibus for board approval. Also, the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee reviewed the finance report and approved the committee minutes of June 12, 2019. The committee also reviewed one ordinance, an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America, N.A. for the 2019 Bank of America Chicago Marathon. The committee also reviewed 5 contracts. The committee approved the ordinance and the 5 contracts, placed all items on the omnibus, and recommended board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report. Chairman Peterson.
Thank you, Director Irvine. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Irvine?
So move.
I'll second.
Second, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is the construction report. Bill?
Good morning. Bill Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer, and with me today is?
Juan Pablo Prieto, Senior Manager, Diversity Programs.
Chris Puchel, Chief RPM Officer.
So our first project today is our East Lake, Milwaukee, Illinois substation upgrade. As I've been reporting over the last few months, all the activity remains at East Lake Substation, where we are in the process of transitioning to all the traction power equipment. Last month I showed you the new lineup number 4 rectifier that had just been delivered, and this is the rectifier and transformer combo installed. This is how we take our ComEd power and convert it to ultimately the DC power we'll distribute to our system. It's currently in the process of commissioning this equipment to put it in service. And I showed you some demo of the old AC breaker systems that were going on in this area last month, and they've been completely demolished out now, and this is the new flooring there. We do an isolated flooring that allows, our system is a floating ground system because it runs on DC, and so this isolates our DC system from ultimately earth ground, and so protects our employees working in the substation so that they don't inadvertently end up having a ground issue. So the floor has been prepped and installed, and ultimately the new DC lineup, all the breakers that provide access for the power from the substation to our railroad go in this space. Project remains on schedule and within budget. Our next project is our Jefferson Park signal upgrade for our Your Blue signals. Project remains on schedule and within budget. Since we last talked, we had another line cut weekend, and here's some activities from that weekend. The contractor is in the process of backfilling an excavation hole where they've been installing duct banks for the new cabling that will communicate between wayside equipment and the relay houses. Here's an example of a handhold where we'll have cables that will come in from one direction, be able to be spliced and fed to other equipment. And our next project is our 95th Terminal Improvement Project. Most of the activity has been working on the finishing touches, is closing out this job. So here's some work at platform level, putting in some of the apparatuses and kind of final touches. So this is a ready room for crews that are going out on trains to wait while trains are being brought from their yard so that they can sit in an air-conditioned or warmed environment depending on season as they're waiting for that equipment to come out. And then there's some sign installation going on here. And here's street restoration work up on Lafayette and over on 95th Street as they've been finishing grinding and repaving and installing the new light poles. And I'll turn over to JP.
And for our diversity efforts on the 95th Street project, the Federation of Women Contractors awarded us, CTA, the Project of the Year award for 95th. So here's the diversity programs team with the awards, and the next picture here is the award itself. We're very proud to receive that award, and
Congratulations.
thank you.
So our next project is our Belmont Jefferson Park Station upgrade project. As I've been reporting over the last couple months, the project remains on schedule and on budget at Jefferson Park as we move into the south terminal and restoration of that parking system there. So here is the new ceiling system. This is the walkway that separates the north terminal from the south terminal. It's getting a new ceiling as well as a series of artistic windbreaks that go in for our customers to use. Gets upgraded lighting as well. And here is the new steel in the south terminal for the canopy, as well as the new island structures for where the buses will be parking and boarding. One of the key features about this upgrade in the terminal is it makes all these bus terminal islands ADA accessible now, which is a feature that this is a major interface bus terminal, so this is an accessible terminal for our customers. It's already in the north, and now it will be in the south. It's a really great add. And my last project is the Lake Line South Main Line Track Improvement Project. As I mentioned last month, we had our first line cut, then we did some grinding I showed you, and so we've had our second line cut. It's a very fast-moving project this entire construction season. This line cut was on the Lake Street right out here, where they started installing new ties and plates and other fasteners. You can see them loading up material here. Here they're removing the third rail and running rail and to prep for demolition, and so they can take out the old equipment. And here's the new ties and the rail reinstalled, and they're securing the plates that the rail is attached to. And the last photo shows you them installing the wood guard, which provides for protections along the sides there. And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Before you go to Chris, and might be a question for Brian, but one, regarding the diversity award, I mean, it's great, we know internally, but how are we communicating that? I mean, that 95th Street was a great project. I think that photo, if you could put it in the Citizen newspaper, I know Defender's doing stuff now online, how are we communicating to the community and even through social media? That was such a big project tied to the reconstruction of 95th Street, you know, and you've got such a great team there that worked on the outreach and doing all of that. How do we push those kind of things externally, as well as internally, you know, to share the work that folks are doing? I mean, the board gets to hear it, but I think that's a beautiful award and something like that, whether it's, you know, up and down South Side newspapers, community newspapers, just putting a photo of the staff and a write-up, working with Brian to get a write-up about the work that was done at 95th was just great. So we need to really get that news out.
We'll work with Brian's team to put an article together and talk to some local newspapers to see what we can put in there.
Yeah.
RPM advanced contracts, demolition and advanced utility relocation. Demolition is really in closeout at this point. Advanced utility work continues on budget and tight to schedule, but with no real impact to the projects that follow. You can see here some examples of duct banks that we're installing. You've seen a number of photographs as we went through the project area. Most of the impacts at the moment are in the area of the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr segment of the work. For the most part, we have done all of the duct banks further south in the bypass area. So again, the work at this point starts to become less about these duct banks and digging in the streets and more about the utilities coming through and pulling the cables and then ultimately removing some of the old poles that were there and really kind of cleaning up a lot of these areas. So it's not just about us removing the older utilities that are in conflict with the future structure, but it also confers some real benefit to the community in terms of cleaning up the spaghetti that you see in a lot of the older Chicago neighborhoods, com wiring and so forth. So that will start to happen on the bypass area, and then as the summer and fall winds on, we'll be doing that up in the area of Lawrence to Bryn Mawr too. Next. Broadway continues on budget and tight to schedule. You have seen, generally you see sort of a series of slides where we do the exterior work, the interior work, and then install the equipment. In this particular substation, maybe a little more than others, we have to kind of do it in some of this work in segments because it's a working substation. So getting those areas all together and doing it. So you've seen different types of work here, new paint or flooring, dielectric flooring, slabs. We're kind of moving through this substation in sectors, if you will, based on the needs of the project based on the needs of the project and the need to keep it operating, because this is a very important substation. But regardless, work continues on budget, a little tight to schedule, but we're anticipating finishing on or close to schedule, and again, with no impact on that tightness of schedule to the design build to follow. So as many of these things wind down, you're sort of seeing, at least in the demolition, advanced utilities, that effort either in closeout or coming to closeout. Our outreach has really stepped up significantly. In this past year, we have done over 40 public outreach. We've reached over 2,000 various participants in those outreach events. They include project updates, transit-oriented development meetings, advanced utility work, informing the community of that, and then most recently 6 meetings, Meet the Contractor. Those were up in the LBMM area. And we'll shortly have some additional meetings in the bypass area. We've also gone and done various surveys. We're starting to talk more strategically with members with folks in the entire project area about what their needs are, what they anticipate as impacts, and how we can best address and mitigate those impacts for them. Also more strategically, I talked about 2,000 people, but of course the project area alone is much bigger than that. So getting better penetration into those areas and just starting that more strategic effort with social media, with posters and banners, so that we start to socialize the project throughout, first and foremost, the project area. But as we kind of get into some of the meetings, and it's the project area really for this job is the entire city to some degree, especially as we get into workforce initiatives and business DBSB initiatives. But anyway, our posters, banners, social media starts to get to kind of that wider group. We get into cross-promotional efforts and other things that are happening. So all of this is kind of table setting for the work that will come. This outreach is increasing in intensity and frequency as the project really starts to, as the advanced work tapers down and the major effort starts towards the fall of this year. So what else is coming? An Open for Business program, part of our strategic effort, our Good Neighbor program, customized information to residents. I mean, one thing the residents come back to us is, the big meetings have limited use to them. People don't have that much time anymore. They want the information kind of brought directly to them in a fairly intimate way. So as we go into these public meetings, we kind of get less and less into us standing up on a stage and walking through a lot of stuff, and more dividing up amongst various, geographic areas that are pretty tight to the neighborhood. I mean, honestly, some folks are 2 blocks away, don't really want to hear about what's happening at Wilton and School. They want to hear what's happening at Roscoe and Sheffield. So we're customizing our approach to deal with that. And the next slide, please. And so in closing, these are just some of the more specifics about meetings we've had in the recent past. This is first the community meetings. That's kind of in and around the project area. A significant group for sure that numbers in the hundreds of thousands. But then as we get into the city as a whole, workforce meetings, the workforce DB outreach and compliance meetings that we're involved with diversity and in doing, JP's team, Juan Pablo's team, Tom's team has been great. We've been working very closely with China and the contractor to bring forward many of these workforce and TBE outreach. And then the small business outreach has been yet another kind of concentric ring that's been substantial. So the outreach on this contract is multifaceted. It will become more strategic as we get into it. We're really trying to, we have, I think, a successful path through the Alderman's office, through some of our chambers of commerce. Our challenge now is to really amplify that and to get deeper into the community so that both on the citywide basis, but also on the community around the construction, that there's a deeper knowledge and an understanding of our project. But that's kind of the outline of where we're at for the board's consideration.
And Chris, the only thing I would add that you definitely want to take advantage of, on a Sunday, you probably got more people in church at one place. So meeting with the local pastor, and maybe even if no one can speak, they can put something in the bulletin. A lot of churches still have inserts
Yeah.
that you can kind of put as informational bullets or information. You can have people, churches I go to, they have an area when church is out, you can go pick up things, buy a tape, DVD, where you can still, the pastor can say, look, if you live in the community and you've got some issues or questions regarding the project, don't underestimate the impact you can have with working with the faith-based communities in these churches as well. And I know it's a lot for staff to be there on a Sunday, but maybe if they're doing that on a Sunday, you give them Monday off. But absolutely where you got 300 or 400, 500 people at a church service that might be able to, when the service is over, come down and ask questions and you can get their information, even to just follow up with them. I don't think we can over-communicate with a project like this that's going to be so disruptive to so many people, than trying to make sure that every touch point we try to use in terms of over-communicating, what's going on and the progress that we're trying to make, and more importantly, how at the end of the day it's going to improve their experience in terms of riding CTA.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, couple of additional points that I wanted to make to add to Chris's comments. One, I have really stressed to staff that we need to think outside the box in terms of how we communicate, that we should not use our traditional methods for communicating around this project. The second thing that I've stressed to staff is that we can't talk about this in transit speak, that when you're talking to the community, you need to talk to them in the context of what this really means to them in real terms. It's you'll have 5 extra minutes to have a cup of coffee or to spend with your kid once this is done. And talking about the benefits of this, I have to translate it not just into the transit benefit, but into real life benefits. And the third thing that I've told them is keep in mind that this is a community that has turnover. A lot of apartments, a lot of rental properties, and so the need to keep repeating the message around this project is going to be constant throughout the entire length of the project. Because it is so long, you're always going to have new people coming into the community and people leaving this community, and that you're always going to be sort of starting fresh with whoever's new, who's going to come in and say, I didn't know anything about this, I don't know what this is, so on and so forth. And so whatever strategy we put together needs to sort of incorporate the facet of the reality of the type of turnover that we may see over the life of this project that we need to constantly keep addressing.
And Chris will remember this, and Brian, I can't think of a speech that I ended up giving regarding the reconstruction that didn't start with, we're taking 20 minutes, cup of coffee, more time with your kids with their homework, just making it personal. But like I said, I can't recall a speech that I gave during the reconstruction that didn't have something in there about the amount of time it was going to take off the commute time. And we would talk about, when we started the project, that basically you could ride a bike faster along the expressway than our trains were actually able to go before. People could relate to that. I mean, they could relate a bike riding faster where the train should be going. So I totally agree. That is a great idea of just really putting it in layman's term and not using the language that we use all the time, because we kind of live it, breathe it, day in and day out, but putting it in terms, like you said, of people who are going to work, coming home, and trying to manage what little time they have between their families and work and all the other things that they're going on. So
Yeah,
good idea.
I hear 2 comments most frequently at the public meetings that I've attended. One is safety, and how a new station, new lighting, new area, new and renovated infrastructure in general makes people feel safer. And then just generally, thank you from people within the disability community, particularly that are in the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr segment, that finally they're going to get stations that they can use. Every meeting I get someone who comes up and says, thank you very much for doing this. It's going to change my life and how I get around the city. So building on those, I think is a great idea, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman and Directors, as you know, Diversity Programs has a unit called Workforce Initiatives that has been hard at work to find opportunities in the building trades for individuals for economically disadvantaged areas. So I wanted to invite China Hampton up to give you a brief update on our efforts.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
My name is China Hampton. I am the manager for Construction Workforce Initiatives in the Diversity Unit, as Juan Pablo stated. As you all may recall, we presented some of our workforce success stories on the Garfield Station renovation project that we just completed. Since then, we've expanded our efforts to create job opportunities that are equitable and inclusive by continuing to apply workforce initiatives and goals on new projects. Today, we will provide you with an overview and update of some of those efforts. First, we want you to note that the CTA's overall workforce initiatives goal is to maximize job opportunities on all major CTA projects, and that we have a strong track record on our commitment to these goals. As you may know, in 2013, the CTA implemented the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act goal on the Red Line South reconstruction project to create job opportunities for unemployed or underemployed workers. From then on, CTA has continued implementing WIOA goals on all large construction projects and has also added union apprentice goals and disadvantaged area goals to create opportunities for individuals from areas where the median income is $40,000 or less. CTA works to identify and make available opportunities across various phases of major projects, from professional services to construction to internships, as well as indirect opportunities wherever possible. On our construction project specifically, we aim to create a comprehensive job opportunities model for individuals historically underrepresented in the trades. The model is based on community outreach and partnerships, access to training and support resources, and job placement and career building. Some of the most recent contracts where we have ongoing workforce initiatives include the Red Purple Modernization Project, the Lake Line and South Main Line track renewal, planning for the Red Line extension, and the 7000 series rail car production. On the Red Purple Modernization Project, CTA is looking to maximize job opportunities throughout all phases of this multi-year project. We started this process by adding workforce goals, many of which you are familiar with. A Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act goal, which accounts for 10% of the labor hours. An apprentice goal, which accounts for 15% of the labor hours. And an economically disadvantaged area goal, which accounts for 35% of the total labor hours. While we won't be breaking ground for the core work on this project until later this year, the CTA is working on developing a robust workforce initiatives program specifically for RPM, one which is based on best practice used on other CTA projects, as well as some enhancements. In the meantime, contractors have already started providing job opportunities. Walsh Floor, the RPM contractor, has hired a diverse group of 14 college and high school interns from Chicago schools. Most of the college interns are engineering students at schools like the University of Illinois at Chicago and Northwestern University, who are members of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers and the National Society of Black Engineers. On RPM, CTA has also partnered with Clean Slate by Kara to provide ex-offenders with introductory construction training and job opportunities through a refuse removal contract for the project site. This past June, the CTA started work on the Lake Line and South Main Line track improvements. The CTA placed the WIOA goal of 10%, an apprentice goal of 10%, and an economically disadvantaged area goal of 35% on this project. For this project, CTA and the project contractor Kiewit held an outreach event in partnership with the Chicago Urban League and the National Latino Education Institute, where Kiewit provided information on job opportunities on the project. Now, individuals from these events were then selected to participate in a one-day pre-apprenticeship training related to the work being conducted on the project. Through this training, Kiewit has started sourcing candidates for job opportunities on the project. So far, 6 individuals have been trained and hired, one of them most notably being a CTA Second Chance employee who was looking to further his career in the construction industry and is now working as a project labor apprentice. Now, to raise awareness about and prepare individuals for construction job opportunities, we have been working to build partnerships with multiple community organizations, business, and assist agencies, and institutions across the city, as well as with the trade unions and our contractors. 2 community partnerships I would like to mention today are the Polished Pebbles Girls Mentoring Group for their Project Pink Hard Hat initiative, as well as Cook County's Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. The Polished Pebbles Project Pink Hard Hat initiatives looks to provide awareness about the construction trades to young girls and women in disadvantaged Chicago areas. We are working with them to help women interested in the trades learn about opportunities to work on CTA construction projects. At the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, the CTA, in partnership with the trade unions and our contractors, Walsh Floor and FH Passion, hosted a construction trades expo. During the expo, we were able to provide information on construction pre-apprenticeships, union pre-apprenticeships, and discuss potential workforce opportunities on CTA's RPM project. We are proud that our partnerships with both the community and the construction industry have earned us the Chicago Urban League's Community Builder Award and the Construction Industry Service Corporation Cisco Public Body of the Year Award. The manufacturing of CTA's 7000 series rail cars has also provided in-depth training and workforce opportunities to individuals as well. Through the U.S. Employment Plan, the contract contains a commitment to hire 169 employees over the course of the production. To date, the contractor is already on track with hiring and training 78 employees. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and I look forward to updating you in the future on our construction workforce initiatives.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a moment to thank China and the diversity team. I have given them some very aggressive expectations about the inclusivity that I want to see occur on these projects. And as we were discussing earlier with the DBE initiatives that we're pursuing, I'm expecting a similar type of impact on the workforce side of our projects. And as we start to gear up with our new projects with the additional capital funding that we're going to get, we're going to be looking at creating a pipeline that's going to create these types of opportunities that we can use and leverage going forward. And similar to the conversations that Ellen is having with the procurement people about things the CTA is doing, the diversity team is having similar conversations with their counterparts at other city agencies about the workforce initiative programs that we're pursuing and looking to see how we can leverage our public dollars throughout the city to maximize these opportunities for those who are looking for jobs and employment. So I expect that we'll hear a whole lot more about the things that we're doing and see it amplified tenfold as other mega projects that aviation and other agencies are pursuing start to take advantage of a lot of the strategies that we're implementing here as well.
No, this is great work. The only thing that I would add, just again, looking at the 4 gentlemen that's going to be working on our new rail cars. You've got to get that information out, whether it's the Heckwich newspaper or that area over there by Torrance or where it's located, getting that information out, the community seeing people, their neighbors working on that project. That's great. I mean, we want to hear the information, but I can't stress enough pushing that out to the community, pushing it out, because you build such a goodwill and capital in the community when they know in advance. Guess what? 78 people already hired from the community to work to build these rail cars. First time in the manufacturing in a long time. So, share your great work. I mean, just share it, push it out, and shared with the community, because that's what we committed to. We committed that the work we were doing, whether it's the Red Purple Modernization Project, the building of the new rail cars, we committed when we were talking about all of this, that the community would be involved and participating. Clearly, you guys are doing the work, but now we need to make the community aware of it. And you gotta fight through all the other things that they're getting information about, but we want them to know what CTA is doing as a trendsetter. You know, we wanna set the pace in terms of just community outreach and the work we're doing. Okay.
I was gonna comment, thank you for your hard work, and, you know, it's obviously showing, obviously this is a very long-term, effort. Two things I wanna highlight, so I think it's really important, the whole education with regards to what the projects are in the various communities, and then the whole piece with regards to what types of actual work we're getting and the training. Where are we getting funding for the training? I'm curious, where, is that a collaborative effort with other groups? I know you mentioned a couple of different trainings that took place.
So we're working with different workforce assist agencies, and they're providing us with the training. So when we had the outreach event with the Chicago Urban League, they have a pre-apprenticeship training program, as well as the National Latino Education Institute. They have a training program.
Right, so, for example, Little Village, which we know is a huge community, I'm on the foundation board, and they have a new program they've gotten state funding for called La Esquinita. And one of the big things, which is the corner in English, the corner, one of the big things that they want to do, because there's such a need, and frankly, I brought it to the table, not just because of our projects, but because of all the other projects, is with regards to training long-term and getting into the workforce. So, I mean, that's another connect. With regards to the chairman's comments, on that, the PR and the communication has to be very tailored to that community as well. But then even having knowledge of what the projects are and what type of workforce we're gonna be looking at is really important. So I know that that's another thing, you know, kind of a follow-up and everything, but that ongoing, because we may have workforce that's ready, but if that community doesn't know what we're looking for, and then we don't have a way to train them, we're not gonna be able to get them in the pool, right? So those things, everything that you're doing is great. I just, you know, that focused effort is really, really important.
Yeah, I think a big part of our strategy is managing expectations and starting to align resources, what we know are opportunities. And we're spending a lot of time talking about the training and development side of the house, so that when it comes time for these jobs to open up, we don't hear from the contractors that we can't find anybody. But it's also recognizing, like you said, that not every project's going to hire 500 people. And how do we manage the, you know, from what I understand, one of the biggest challenges that you have with this sort of process is the people who spend the time to go through the training, but then at the end of it have nothing to go to, and are left with so now what do I do with all of this? So that's one of the reasons why we're also having a broader conversation with our sister agencies and others, because the timing of projects and when certain types of jobs may be available or unavailable starts to become a lot easier if you're looking at the broadest range of projects that the city has, as opposed to just focusing just on CTA. And the broader strategy around what we're doing here and the coordination with the other sister agencies and city departments is to really create that kind of network that allows people to move from project to project to project based on what their skill levels are, so that they aren't, we're not viewing these as just people who have been trained to work on CTA projects. They've been trained to work on construction projects. And wherever those construction projects happen, we want to make sure that these people are getting priority consideration and are being identified as a potential pool for job opportunities all throughout the city. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to put in place.
That's really critical, especially the reason I brought up Little Village is also because in that area, as we all know, there are two major projects, construction projects that are going in. And so the building of this workforce can also enhance those, and those are private sector. And we have a lot of public, but we have a lot of private sector, and there's a need for the workforce. So anyway, thank you for the work, and just emphasis on that.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
suggestion.
Okay. All right, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. To our team. The next agenda item is new business, and I would like to address a few things. First, I need to announce the passing of our Citizen Advisory Board member, Maury Fantis. I met Maury only once during one of our ADA Advisory Committee meetings. And Kevin, I knew him a lot better, but I think anytime we lose anyone who has served and really served to make things better for those who use our system, we want to acknowledge them. But I'd like to have Kevin give a few brief remarks, who, again, as I said, knew Maury a lot better than I.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, Maury Fantis was someone that if you knew him, you knew he was very passionate and very engaged and involved with his community. And he served the CTA in multiple ways, most recently the Citizens Advisory Board, but the CTA ADA Advisory Committee. I also served with him on the Access Living Board. Maury was just engaged in the world, and if there was something going on, he saw a problem, he let us know about it. He was probably one of the most consistent people in the disability advocacy community that I knew, in terms of he showed up all the time, and over my couple decades of doing disability rights advocacy in Chicago, Maury was always around, or if he wasn't there, he was supporting, he was sending a check, or he and his wife Judith were both really engaged, and it was shocking to hear that he's gone, because he was just at the Citizens Advisory Board meeting last month, involved, asking questions. He was at the Access Living Gala last month with his wife, and so it's a real loss to Chicago. It's a loss to the CTA. It's a loss to the disability community, and loss to all of us that knew him. And so they don't make many like Maury. So we'll miss him, and our hearts go out to his wife Judith and his family, and really appreciate his service. And it's a real model for how to be involved in your community and work to make it better. So thanks, Maury.
Thanks, Kevin, and just to echo what you said, the CTA family wishes to send our condolences to his wife Judy, his extended family, and his business associates as well. He will be missed. Greg, I don't know, and if we don't, we probably should start for advisory. If we could do a resolution. I mean, it seems like Marty had a long history here.
Sure, and I knew Maury extremely well. His wife Judith and I went to graduate school 47 years ago.
Okay.
So I've known Judy forever.
Yeah.
I've known Maury for years, socialized with them. Maury was a wonderful man. I mean, he really, really was. And we should do a resolution, and I'll certainly let Judy know about it.
High school participants in our One Summer Chicago intern program visit the board, and we're excited to have them here. I know they're getting ready to come in, and so we're going to take not a recess, but a break while they come in, and we're going to line up, I think, and take a picture.
We will put up the screens. I think they have to do that back there.
That's right. Let me do this too while our interns are coming in. I would be remiss, as I said, I spoke with Mike Gwynn a little bit earlier. I think it was last Friday doing my board briefings. But Mike, as I said, you're not leaving CTA. I'm sure I will get your forwarding information, especially now that I know you're going to be down in Texas. I do come there about twice a year, so I'll get a chance hopefully to stay in touch with you. But on behalf of the board, again, thank you for your years of service. I said to Mike, to the board members, he was young, he didn't have any gray hair when Forrest talked him into taking on the whole Cubic Ventura initiative. And so Mike ended up doing a yeoman's job. So again, Mike, just want to thank you for your years of service and look forward to staying in touch.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I also want to take a moment to acknowledge Mike and his work here at CTA. I have had the pleasure of working with him since I came back as president and have given him some of the most difficult and innovative projects that CTA has pursued. And certainly, not only has Mike delivered, but Mike has delivered in such a way that we've got nothing but kudos from our customers about the successful integration and upgrading of very complicated systems here at CTA. And so I've appreciated Mike's hard work and due diligence in supporting us, and I really wish him all the best in his new job. And as you indicated, no one ever really leaves CTA, and so I suspect that we will see Mike come and visit us from time to time in his new role, and as we could pursue other opportunities going forward.
Because, Mike, we really want to build up on that relationship in terms of the company you're going to. So,
And I want to echo that too, Mike. I really, it been a pleasure to work with you at CTA, and I really appreciate the passion that you brought to your job and the commitment to innovation and excellence and community engagement. And so it was a real joy to work with you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Mike. But like the chairman said, you're never really leaving, so we'll, you know how to
exactly.
find you.
We don't say goodbye. We say we'll see you later. Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. So how do you want to do this? I wanted to say, I know we're going to take a photo, but and I hate to talk with my back to folks. So I'm going to stand over here, my adorable 4 minutes. First of all, welcome the interns. First of all, thank you for being here. I think we're going to try to plan during one of the luncheons an opportunity for us to talk with you. My name is Terry Peterson. I'm actually chairman of the board. I've been chairman almost 10 years. I grew up on the south side, went to Dyett Middle School at 51st and King Drive. I went to Inglewood High School when it was around at 62nd and Stewart. I grew up around the Washington Park area. It is just an honor to have you here. One of the things that I hope that you take away, and that is that at some point in your career you want to work in transit. For me growing up, and I used to catch the train at 55th and Garfield, and I would ride all the way to the end on Howard. Coming north on the L was just a new experience. I didn't leave my neighborhood. I pretty much stayed in the Washington Park area, but getting on the train with some of my friends and riding all the way to the end of the line just opened up a whole new world for me. But the other thing that was interesting is I thought the only careers at CTA was driving the train or riding the bus. Driving the bus. I didn't realize that, guess what, some of you are going to work in finance, you're going to work in planning. I've already talked with April about getting an intern for us in the board's office. There's so many careers in transportation, and this is a growing career. This is one of those, I speak at schools all the time, and I'll say, raise your hand if you like to make $100,000 a year. And, a lot of times our kids, you think that the only way you can do it is you play sports. Guess what? Their jobs, whether you're working in the law department, you're working in planning and other places, you can make a good living, you can take care of your family, buy a home, buy nice cars. So I'm hoping this experience will also open up your mind to a career in transit at some point in time. And that when you finish high school, go off to college, you come back here as part of an internship. But one, I just want to welcome you this morning and say I'm glad to see all of you. And I know we're going to meet again, but I just want to do this on behalf of the board. I don't know if any of the other board members want to say anything.
Sure, I'll say something. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How exciting. This is so exciting. My name is Arabelle Alba Rosales, and I'm a fellow board member, vice chair. And I grew up in the city, Pilsen, Little Village, and Bridgeport, now live in Lincoln Park. And it's very exciting to see all of you. I want you to be really hungry when you come in to learn. A lot of times what ends up happening is you get a summer internship and you just kind of let it go by. Don't. Use every opportunity to learn, to make contacts, to ask questions. I have to tell you, I use a lot of interns. I have a technology firm, and I have a couple of other companies. I am an entrepreneur, and we have a lot of interns that work for us, and I encourage them as much as possible because the reality is that you are our future leaders. And so make sure you learn as much about transportation, make the contacts, you never know. We have a number of people from Micah, we have a number of people that are here, they leave, and then they come back, or they get involved in the city. So you never know who you're gonna meet along the way, you never know who's gonna help you with the next step, but welcome, I'm very, very excited to have all of you here, as I know all our board members are.
And again, you'll see us again, I know every year at the open, I normally speak, and
Yeah.
it's a more informal, while you're having lunch, you get to ask us questions, any question, I mean, there's nothing off topic that you can't talk with us about in terms of our career and how we got to where we are today and what we're doing. This is sort of part-time for me, my full-time job is that I'm the vice president of government affairs at Rush University Medical Center. So my day job is really, I'm involved in healthcare, but again, we'll talk about that at another time. Go over what you want to say.
Sure, I want to make a couple of comments. First of all, welcome to all of you. And I want the board to know that we have 156 summer interns this year. It's the largest group of summer interns we've had since I've been president of CTS. And I also want the board to know that historically, the One Summer Chicago programs are made up of juniors and seniors in high school, and that this year we actually expanded it to include freshmen and sophomores. So we have everybody at all levels throughout high school who are doing this. We also do more than just give them a job. We have over 100 mentors who basically work with the interns over the course of the summer. We also provide them with development opportunities and other side activities to help them sort of develop the skills necessary to be successful in a business environment. And so I know that while they're doing work every day, they're also getting opportunity to develop the other skills that they're going to need to work in the business environment. And of course, the best thing about being a summer intern is that you get a free CTA pass that allows you to ride CTA for free all summer long. Which I'm sure everybody enjoys. I also want to sort of reiterate some of the things that you heard Terry and Arabelle say. I'm a resident of the south side of the city. I grew up on the south side. I went to public school. I went to Shoesmith Grammar School and Kenwood High School. I am probably one of those people who has left and come back numerous times to CTA. I think this is like my third or fourth stint here at CTA. So every time I think I'm leaving, I find a reason to come back. But I think the most important thing that I want all of you to know is that at some point in time in our lives, Terry, Arabelle, the other board members and I, we're standing where you're standing today. And we have been able to move forward in our lives and end up being, owning our own companies, being executives in healthcare, being chairman and vice chairman of the board or members of the board or president of the Chicago Transit Authority, the second largest transit system in the country. And so if we can do it, you can do it. And that's the only message that I wanted all of you to hear today from all of us collectively. We're happy to have you here. We're glad that you're able to participate in our board meeting. We're excited to be able to take a picture with all of you. But most importantly, we want you to understand that you have so many opportunities going forward, and all you have to do is just take advantage of them. And we look forward to seeing many of you here at CTA in the future in various capacities. As Terry indicated, we have no shortage of job opportunities here that can be terrific career opportunities for everyone. With that, I will turn it back over to you.
Esther, I was going to say, I don't know how we're going to get all of it.
Chairman,
How are we going to do this?
Chairman, before we take this picture, we need Director Irvine a motion to adjourn, seconded by Reverend Miller. All in favor? Say aye. We're adjourned.
I move. Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned now.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
So we're gonna take the direction of our photo team, and they're gonna direct us of where we should stand. Some people are gonna sit, some people are gonna kneel,
This is good,
some people
Dana.
are gonna stand, or we're gonna stay in this direction.
First of all, to the elected officials. Sure. And to our leadership, what you did. Okay. I'll bring my nameplate over so people know I'm not a member of the board.